Welcome to the They Gonna Feel Me podcast. This is episode 7, and I'm your host, Rob. Joined today by Reezy, Chris, and LC. The authentic show where authentic men have authentic conversations. This week's episode takes a more somber salute as we remember the 9/11 tragedy. And we dive into the conversation starting with today's topic, which is where were you when you got the news?
Think I'll start this one off. Um, since I'm the youngest, and it's crazy to think it's 20 years later.
20
Uh,
years.
but I was in fifth grade, bro, when this happened. So I was only around like 10 years old when this first happened, when this first transpired, me being 30 now. I still remember being in class. In our class, we had the TVs where we would display our we would have news that would play from time to time, but we mainly just did it for like events, like we would shout out students for birthdays and stuff like that. We did that through middle school, did that through high school as well. But I vividly remember this day was so different. Being in fifth grade, we they cut on our principal at the time. I don't even remember my teacher's name, but our principal was Principal Tony because that was his last year there. It was a black principal. And I remember we stayed in class. We didn't do anything. We didn't go anywhere. They just cut everything on. And then I remember by the time they cut the news on, the first plane had already hit. And then we saw live the second plane hit. And it's so crazy. This happened in New York. We're in Tennessee at the time, in Brighton, Tennessee. We're thousands of miles away. And our school and everything still let out. But yeah, man, I was 10 years old in the fifth grade, bro, when all of this first happened that long ago. It's crazy just to think about it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, go ahead.
no, you can go.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, I was in high school when it happened. I remember I believe I was in the 10th grade. So yeah, I walked into it was early in the morning. I was in the morning, I believe, and I had shop class that morning, wood shop. I believe it's Mr. Buddy's class. But anyway, I walked into the classroom because it was out in the trailer. So we had classes inside the building, but then we had trailers outside of the school building that we had classes in as well. So I went outside and went into the trailer, and I just saw all of my classmates looking up at the TV screen. I'm just like, what's going on? And then I look up and I see a plane hitting the building, hitting the World Trade Center, and I'm just like, whoa. So naturally, I sit down with all my classmates and just, I think everybody was shocked at that time because they didn't know what was happening. And as kids, you really don't fully understand. Even at that age, I think being young, you don't fully understand the impact of what's going on.
Right.
But you just know it's something that's devastating and something that is, you don't expect to happen in the United States. So, yeah.
So I think me and Rob, not trying to date ourselves or anything, but yeah, y'all talk about all this like high school and everything. Yeah, we were in college, freshman year in college, and
No, it was junior. It
sophomore,
was junior year. Junior.
junior, okay,
2001. 2001.
2001.
Yeah.
Man, you should have took the freshman year, big dog.
Yeah,
Hey, bro, you gotta be real, man. Bruh, they see these grades, man. They see these
yeah.
grades. You can't hide. You can't hide. Hey,
So yeah, it was my freshman year. I don't know about Rob.
man.
But nah, like we were roommates in college, like pretty much the whole time, and it was I remember just waking up face down in my bed like college students do, and I just remember looking up and the television was right there. I think it was the first thing I turned on, and then like it was just all this craziness on pretty much every channel, you might as well say, and really it's not even so much watching that on television that sticks out to me is just all the aftermath that came after, like just how everybody, like, when you do make it around the yard, because I lived on campus, and like just all the speculation and rumors. And I think my parents called and they were like, you need to go and get gas. And there were dumb, stupid lines at the gas station. And it was just mayhem and what have you. It was so quiet on the campus, weirdly, because I don't know, I guess everybody like it dipped, or it was just a real eerie time. I don't want to say scary. I hate to say that I wasn't scared of them like coming and attacking us, like in Little Itabena, Mississippi.
I was just gonna say, man, of all the places to attack, you
Like,
weren't
y'all
thinking
just petty.
Itabena. Like, come on now, somebody come to Itabena and do something. Like,
Yeah, it's like, damn,
you got too much time on your hands, bro. For real.
really.
But for me, like Elsie said, we were roommates, and I'm normally a early morning riser. So that particular morning, it was a Tuesday. And back then on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we had classes that started at 9:25. So it was about, I guess, when I turned the TV on, maybe about 8:15, I want to say. And I don't know why that's still stuck in my head, 8:15. But because when I turned the channel, I just saw the building, one of the buildings was smoking. And I'm like, what's what's going on? You like confused. So then you change the channel. And because back then, and pretty much now, people know that I love sports. So, I had on ESPN. And like, if ESPN cut to something, it is major, because like rarely do they ever cut to, just cut to something. But I remember every channel, or basically every channel I turned to, had the same thing, on it. And like he was saying, you're kind of in a state of confusion because you don't know what's going on. The first one you see, like, okay, maybe a pilot had an accident. They got confused or something like that. But then when the second one hit, you like, okay, it's something going on. And then later in the day, when you hear about like the Pentagon, you're like, oh, hold on, man, y'all just, and it is like I think the word that I would use, Elsie, you said eerie. I would say somber, because normally the campus back then, the Valley back then, it's Wild Wild West. But it's certain things that happen, like everybody just stop and just stand, and stand still, no matter what you're doing. Is like, okay, this is real. This affects more than just the people in New York. This has world implications, because I think the whole world stopped and looked, and took notice.
Definitely did.
And took notice too. That's another aspect of it. And I think, well, I know we're gonna talk more. We're gonna talk more about that on down the line. But transitioning, because Chris, when you brought this whole the whole idea up, you had it was a documentary that you wanted all us to check out, and was Turning Point, a five episode documentary that really encapsulates the background story and the things running up to and afterwards. And what we want to look at now, though, is some of the political takeaways, like moving away from the actual incident right now, but going to the political takeaways. And what were some of you guys' political takeaways from the documentary Turning Point that you saw?
So I tried to watch the documentary, and I got quite a bit in, but like, honestly, it was hard to watch. It really was. Like, I mean, the thing is that, like, I don't know, maybe my quote unquote wokeness makes me sometimes really resent the United States from the standpoint of how it treats us Black citizens, and it doesn't always make me feel that patriotic. But I can't say I'm not inhuman to see human suffering from anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like it still pulls on like a heartstring, and like to see those people is just it's so. Even to have seen it, lived through it on some level, to see it so like on the screen like that, so close up and visceral, and have them explain just the a lot of the aspects of it. Some of those stories are just so hard to not get choked up about. And I mean, even during the time, I mean, yeah, we're in Mississippi. Well, we're in the South, all of us. But like, I mean, I had family in New York, and I mean, I didn't know what they did, but like, I was like, where were y'all that day? It was like, it didn't happen. It affected me in that way. And as time progressed and we learned more and more about like what happened and who attacked us and why and blah, 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 I couldn't help but take away how I felt like, even though like they did a foul about attacking innocent people in the way in which they did for like these radical ideals, I still couldn't help but feel like, I mean, but that the United States, we were still culpable in some way. We were still at fault. Like, I mean, we pretty much emboldened and empowered the people that came. We talked about this last week with when they pulled the soldiers from Afghanistan a little bit. We created our own enemy, and then the political games that happened after the fact where where it just seems as if like it was just a money grab, like an attempt to like get control of oil and things like that. It just felt as if like at the center of this all, they use patriotism and revenge or avenging rather, like the fallen people and that were affected on that day in the attack against the United States. And it came into something a lot more greedy and selfish, and it helped get Bush reelected, when it was all said and done, when he should have like been a one-term president, in my opinion. And there's many more other takeaways, but like, it's, I'll let y'all talk, come back around.
I think for me, one of the shining stars, if you could say it, and I subsequently read a couple articles about her, where she really doesn't take credit for it, is Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democrat from California, who was actually the one legislator that voted against giving the president of the United States the powers to declare war on any organization or group, the far-reaching powers detailed or entailed in the Patriot Act. And when I did a little research about her, found out her background was in clinical social work. So she was a clinical social worker. And one of the things in the documentary that was so poignant for me is she talked about when they went to the memorial at the church. When they went to the memorial at the church, and the pastor that was there, he spoke about being careful when you're going after individuals in darkness, your enemies or whatever. Be careful that you don't sink to that level or let that darkness consume you. And she said, when I heard that, there was a confirmation that I needed not to vote to give the president of the United States those far-reaching powers. And so by a vote of 420 to 1, she was the only one that said, hold on, I think we need to calm our brakes and slow down, because we're making an emotional decision. And we know in leadership, in many times it's not pretty. Everybody likes the title, but not everybody wants to do the work and the hard stuff that goes along with it. And I think that was a great show of leadership, because under a lot of pressure, because if you think about it, during that time, if a country just flew 3 planes into, the World Trade Center
Or
and
if
the
you think about
Pentagon.
it,
Think
just,
about it, the
you had the
whole
people that brave
country.
people that stopped the fourth one. So.
Yeah, the whole country is gonna want. They gonna want revenge. They gonna have, like 50 Cent in the song, "Blood in my eye, dog, and I can't see." They want a pound of flesh. We want to find out who did this. We finna go eviscerate these folk off the whole map. But the person it was one person that stood up and said, "Hold on, let's think about this," because you don't make emotional decisions. You don't, because even as parents, and Chris, right now you can speak to this too. Like, they always say never whoop your kids when you're angry.
Mm-hmm.
You never whoop your kids when you're angry, because 9 times out of 10 you probably gonna hit them way harder than what you really wanted to. You really wanted to do, because you're not thinking rational.
Rationally, yep.
And they held the vote 3 days after September the 11th, and that's nowhere near enough time to calm down
Process
and
anything.
rationalize, because I think Barbara Lee, to me, was a real leader in that instance, and I'll let you guys continue.
What's so crazy with you speaking on Barbara Lee? I remember, when Hillary was running, some of the running jokes was, can you imagine having a female president the minute she has a period or whatever somebody said, there she'll be quick to react off impulse, you know what I mean, and not think. And then when I went back and I watched that documentary and I watched how quick, you know, everybody was like, "Oh, we got to get him, we got to get him, we got to get him," and nobody actually took the time to step back and think and say, "Okay, look, I understand we just lost thousands of people. I understand it was an attack on the United States, but we need to think rationally about how we're going to do it." A male leader didn't do that. You know what I'm saying? And then when we fast forward 20 years later, how many troops, how many innocent lives have we lost? And what are we really fighting for? You know what I'm saying? Um, Politically, I mean, just stepping back and looking at that day, looking at the ramifications, the catastrophic destruction that happened that day and the lives that were lost, listening to the stories from that documentary is tough. It's sad. Like Al C said, I'm a very, hard strung guy. I don't try to show my emotion, but that during that time I was watching that documentary, man, I can account at least 4 out of the 5 episodes I teared up. You know what I'm saying? It was a tough watch, but I also thought to myself, looking at how fast we went into war without a proper strategy, without thinking about how we're going to get in, get who we need to get, and get out, how wrong that was at the end of the day. I'm not saying don't take an eye for an eye. I'm strongly for that. I'm like that to this day. If you do something to me, I'm ready to do it right back to you. But I think as I've gotten older, I think more on how I'm gonna do it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not just gonna quickly react and be that full-fledged Memphis dude, like, oh no, I'm coming back 10 toes down. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna actually step back and think. And when I look at how quick we went into everything, how we didn't think, and when I look at the casualties that we've had and how, just diving deep into that documentary and looking at how America looked like thugs, you know what I'm saying, doing waterboarding techniques and all this other type stuff to get answers so we could quickly go and get somebody, and we're just over here abusing our power and abusing these people who are just, random innocent bystanders of that country. They have nothing to do with it. They just look like those counterparts. You know what I'm saying? It kind of made me have an eye, being a black man in America, like, bro, I can be in the wrong place at the wrong time and you'll scoop me up because I look like that person that did this. You know what I'm saying? I look like that person that may have robbed that bank, or I'm being racially profiled because of the color of my skin. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of that documentary and a lot of what transpired just made me look at us as a whole, as a country, and think that we didn't think things through 100%. We just acted off of emotion.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have much to say about it, but I just feel like, pressure bust pipes at the end of the day. And I feel like that's the reason why we were so quick to, try to get revenge. It was just pressure situation. Everybody was screaming for blood. They wanted revenge. They
Yep.
wanted answers. They wanted, somebody to basically, be responsible for what happened. To be held responsible for what happened. So that's why the president and the government jumped so quick to try to retaliate and send our troops over there, which was, when we look at it 20 years later, it was a bad decision. And I just think about all the presidents after Bush, who had hard times with this as well. And it's just like, it's like this almost like this avalanche or this snowball effect of, it went to Obama and it falls to the orange guy, and then to Biden, who's trying to pull the troops out, and people have a problem with it 20 years later. Like thousands of people have died. Hundreds of thousands of people have died, I believe. And it's just like, at some point we have to stop. Like at some point we have to, it's time to come home and tend to our own country, which is in shambles itself, which has a whole bunch of issues going on. And we could use those resources that we're using over here, like to get our country together. You know what I'm saying? And I think another big thing is just it's another thing where we want to sweep around somebody else's front door. You know what I'm saying? We don't even want to tend to our own stuff that's going on. Why our house is messy. We trying to basically try to go clean up somebody else's house. You know what I'm saying? Like because we see that house is dirty and we don't even realize how dirty our own house is, basically. So I just feel like America, we got a lot of stuff to work on. You know what I'm saying? Like as far as like we really feel like we're this high and mighty. We got it all together. And yes, this is it's a great country, and a lot of foreigners come over here and make a great life for themselves. But at the same time, it is a lot of issues in our country. You know what I'm saying? And it's deep rooted into our country from its conception, basically, since it started. It's deep rooted since the beginning of America, basically. So I just feel like we got a lot of stuff to work on, and politically, that's one of the biggest things. It's just like this whole thing is just kind of messed up, man. Like I don't know.
I know we finna go. I know we finna go to the next topic, but you made a perfect point about America needing to fix so much. If you can get actual numbers, I'm not gonna speak actual factual, but we've had countless attacks on our own people from our own people, whether it be little kids, whether it be grown-ups, shootings in Walmart, shootings in the mall, from people dealing with mental health. And how many, I don't know if you remember, because Rob, you watched the full documentary, but how many trillion did they say we spent? Like 10 trillion so far?
I was coming to that.
You see what I'm saying? We've spent so many trillions of dollars on this damn war, but we can't put none of that into mental health. You see what I'm saying? And that's like one of the number one things that we have. That's one of the number one reasons as to why we got people like Dylan Roof. We got people, whatever the dude name is, the Sandy Hook murderer. You know what I'm saying? We got people like this that are actually roaming the streets with AR-15 style weapons, killing innocent men, women, and children, but we can still commit money to a war that we don't even know why we still over there. And they even said that in the documentary. Why am I fighting? What am I here for? Half of the people don't even care about 9/11, but they claim to be so patriotic. And it's just stuff like that that pisses me off, because I'm one that actually tried to join the military after something like that happened. And it's like people they just turn a blind eye to it, and they claim to be so patriotic, but that's the last thing that you hear. You know what I'm saying? So it's just it's definitely messed up over here, without a doubt.
It's ironic, like I said, that you were saying that reason, because that was the actual next topic. 20 years later, has your opinion changed? And that number that you were looking for, hold on to your seats. It's 2.3 trillion. $2.3 trillion we have spent in Afghanistan. So let's think about that. 20 years. So 20 years has your opinion changed from the beginning to now?
So I remember, going back to the day of, or at least maybe some of the weeks following after. I remember when we were on the campus at Valley. I remember we had some some professors and teachers who were from they. I don't think they were necessarily from that part of the world, but they were brown skinned. They were they could have been Indian, they could have been Sikh, they could have been anything for all we know. And I remember how nice they were after 9/11, and I felt as if I knew that was coded. I knew that was kind of like a thing of, I look like the enemy right now, and I need for y'all to understand that I'm kind, I'm nice, I don't need for you to attack. And they're talking about like some takeaways. Like, I mean, I hate to dial back, but I, as a nation, I will say that I feel as if like all of our racism and all of our other issues, they kind of went to the back burner to focus more so on the immediate thing, and whether or not they reacted poorly or whatever. We worked in unison for like one moment, like because we had somebody who we hated a little bit more at the time. But I feel and we all know that after that there were a lot of attacks and ugly things done to the Muslim community there was here in the United States, or people being blamed and people getting accused of various things. And that ugliness that we showed, I will say, I hate that we as Black people who've been on the receiving end of that kind of scrutiny and treatment, I hate when we band together with people and act that way as if like we don't know what the ramifications are of such pointed, hate speech and toxic thought processes is. I mean, I'll be honest. I remember having ignorant thoughts before. I've been on planes with people who looked of a particular way, and like yes, that those type of thoughts crept in my mind. But as times progress, it's just like I can't help but think like all those. We think about all the countless people that we've lost on our end, but like, what about all the people they lost over there? It's kind of like this war. What are we fighting for? Like, what was the ramifications? Like, we emboldened a lot of people and empowered them, and maybe we switched them over to the other side. Maybe they didn't have any particular position in this, and then they became radicalized based on the actions of us and how terrible like our actions were, and her, and while we were abroad. And 20 years later, I didn't agree with the war then. I hate that we as Americans, we feel as if we have to be so gung-ho, so America fuck yeah about things, and like basically feel as if like we have to go and blow somebody off the face of the planet. All that money that was spent, it's like people believe in all this infrastructure for like war and basically acting like we the big dick in the room, but it's kind of like there's so many other things that like our resources can be used. And it's kind of like I feel as if all these patriotic ideas that people want to think about themselves as Americans, what they are, it's like we stray so far away from that, and we miss our opportunity to be greater, to be above like our greatest enemies. And that 20 years later, it just feels like a whole bunch of confusion and loss, and it's a lot more tragic actually now, the aftermath of everything, than what happened in the moment for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think 20 years later, I don't feel like my view on the war has changed. I felt like LC said, I was against it myself. I just didn't feel like it was necessary. I feel like we could have did what we did when we got Bin Laden, and that would have been, that been it. You know what I'm saying? Like, instead of having this expensive ass war, and all these casualties, on both sides, we could have avoided all that, at the end of the day. So my opinion definitely hasn't changed. I never liked Bush. I thought the whole weapons of mass destruction was some bullshit, and it just gave people a reason to go shoot up people, at the end of the day. And another thing that I remember most from that documentary was those soldiers peeing on the guy, Taliban or whatever, you know, they were peeing on these people, and I'm just like, what are y'all doing? Like, why? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why are we over here acting like this? And you know, it's just like there should never be grounds for you to behave that way. And I mean, I'm pretty sure the soldiers were reprimanded, and you know, it was frowned upon. But you know, at the end of the day, just seeing that on a documentary, you know, is just something that I don't know, just stuck out to me, and I'll probably never forget. And it just goes back to another point of why this war shouldn't have started, because it gives these people who are racist, who hate people, who spew hatred, you know, that's what they want. They want to, you know, it's a win-win for them. They want to go over there and kill as many of them as they can, because they hate people they hate people of color anyway. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, 20 years later, nah, my opinion hasn't changed. If anything, I just, you know, getting all these details because I was so young and not knowing all the facts, I feel like it just basically gives me more confirmation of my ideals when I was younger, you know, and lets me know that yeah, it was wrong.
And I think you make a great point, because that was part of what I was going to say. And I think 20 years later, what's important for me is like the importance of the media, the importance of a fair and balanced and media with integrity that's going to do their job. You see the difference between these last four, you know, last 4 years with 45, you know, with the alternative facts and fake news and foolishness like that. Because when you have media and print journalism, reporters that are going to ask you the hard hitting questions, that's not interested in being your friend. They don't care about trying to get a book deal, trying to get in like Washington clicks or anything like that. Their only interest is to get the truth, get the truth to their readers. Then you'll find out a lot of things. And one of the things that I failed to mention earlier, politically, one of the that stuck out to me, and a person that I lost a lot of respect for, was Colin Powell. He was a war hero, but to see when he got on stage in front of all those foreign leaders and absolutely lied about weapons of mass destruction, when talking about when they went into Iraq, when the war was diverted from Afghanistan into Iraq, to just see him in front of all those leaders on that stage, and as a black man, just up there spewing, towing the company line. That was that I really lost a lot of respect for him. And I think over time, sadly, over time, in some ways, because of the horrendous presidency that we just had, a lot of people look back on Bush and were like, maybe he wasn't that bad, but they don't realize when for somebody who actually lived through that time, you realize that Bush and Cheney were pretty bad. From the standpoint of even Kanye, has the iconic moment during the Hurricane Katrina telethon, where him and Mike Myers are standing on stage. He famously says George Bush doesn't care about black folks, and Mike Myers is just sitting there like,
nah, he hit him with that what? That saddle.
But sometimes, like I said, history, because sometimes people have a short attention span and short memory. They don't realize how epically bad Bush was, because Clinton actually left him a surplus, but because of Bush and the wars we got into, it left us with a deficit that and on very well, really the about to collapse. Remember when Obama got in office? But going on, unless Chris, you got something about 20 years later. What do you think about it?
It's crazy because it's actually a little story time based off what LC started off saying. So I remember when I first got on a plane, this was back in like 2015, something like that. I got on a plane to go to Universal Studios, and I remember this this uh, this guy, he stood up, this Afghanistanian guy, I guess you can call him, I don't know. He stood up, and of course he had the Afghanistanian whatever. He got up, bro.
I don't think that's what they call him, bro.
Man got up, and of course he had the turban on his head wrapped up, and he got up to go use the restroom, and then he comes back to sit down. And he gets up again and goes to the front. And he comes back and sit down. So the second time I
You're
looked
getting
up,
up too
keep in
much,
mind,
bro.
it's my first time on a plane. So the first time I watch him walk by, I'm like, okay. And the second time I'm like, okay. And then he walks by again and he comes back and he doing shit like this. And I'm like, big dog. I don't know what you think going on, but this ain't that. You will get collapsed on this plane, no cap. We not finna have this happen all over again. But man, going back, I mean, again, I was young, man, and I don't think I had any thoughts or views or anything like that at that age because I was 10. I wasn't fully into it. I looked at it as, being younger. My dad was in the Navy, but I looked at it as, hey, I get out of school early. I didn't know what it meant. And it didn't start to dawn on me until I actually got into high school and we getting, 4 or 5 years with the anniversary, and I hate using anniversary for tragic events, but we're 4 or 5 years into an anniversary, and now I'm starting to come into my own thoughts, and I'm understanding what happened and what's going on, at least what I think happened and what's going on. And um, I at the time I still didn't really grasp it. I still didn't really think that anything was wrong because I told you at the time I was all for, like, get them back. They did something wrong, let's get them back. But then when I get older now and I'm looking at the numbers that we've spent on this war, I'm looking at the tragedies that we've had on our own homeland, and I'm looking at the bodies that we've had come back from over there. I mean, you just look at it, these 17-year-old kids, 18-year-old kids that are going over there that have had no idea what they're doing. And we're losing these teens that haven't experienced life really, for a fight that they don't even know what we're fighting for and know what's going on. It's just now my views are like, from the beginning, none of this should have ever happened. I think that if I was fully into my thoughts, if I was as old as you guys at that time, I would have had those same thoughts and fought against it as well. I would have did the exact same thing that the Congresswoman did. No, we need to slow down and not act so quick. So I think, starting off being young, not fully being into my thoughts, I really had no thoughts on it. But now my thoughts are very similar to y'all. It's like a lot of this stuff is happening, man, for no reason at all. After we got Osama, after we got Osama, that should have been it. That should have been the curtain call. Okay, bring everybody back home. We're done. We got the person who did it. We've executed our mission. Now it's time to come back.
All right. So venturing all to the last point, the lasting effects, and you guys have kind of touched on it, but what were some lasting effects of the attacks in your mind? Because you touched on a little bit with the perception of people that you see that were Muslims. What are some other things that you saw?
I mean, I think the other thing is just like TSA. I mean, I think things will never be the same. Traveling isn't the same. Like, you can't just, I'm not familiar with how the airport was before those attacks, but I feel like
it was nowhere near.
Yeah,
it was nowhere near
less,
like it is now.
A lot less security. I traveled on an airplane when I was a kid, but I don't remember, what that experience was like. But I feel like it was definitely less security, less of these getting patted down and check, so
I mean,
I
shoot, you
feel like
remember how lax it was when we used to go on the Navy base? You could go on the Navy base with a
yeah,
regular
going on
ID.
the base,
And
like
after that,
I
they
feel
cut
like
it off.
like things like that, are gonna forever be changed. Like they're not gonna allow people to just randomly come, to these places that are military or high risk places. You can't. They're not gonna allow people to just come in there freely and openly. So I think that's one of the lasting effects. And of course, yeah, that whole like racial profiling thing. I think a lot of it still goes on today, even though it's been 20 years later. Sometimes I mean, I'll admit it. Sometimes when I see people on a plane, I think my mind just it's not a malicious thing or a thing where I intend to be that way, but it's just your mind goes back subconsciously to that moment, and
Yeah.
you kind of think about like what are these people going to do something, or what if these people did try to do something, and I think that's just a natural response no matter if you intend to be that way or not, so and I think those are, the biggest takeaways in just the damage to the families. I think, from the attacks, that's another lasting impact. A lot of families have been hurt by, torn apart by from their family members dying over there, and the financial implications of the war as well, like have hurt our the United States of America. That's hurt us as well. So, though I think those are the biggest effects of the war, to me personally.
I think to this date, man, it's a lot of lasting effects. One lasting effect that hits close to home for me and my brother. Happy birthday to my mom, whose birthday is
Yeah.
on September
No,
11th. She
yeah.
always says that, I mean, she's blessed
Our
to be
birthday
born on
won't
that
be
day.
birthday's never the
Exactly,
same.
definitely
Won't
happy
be.
birthday, mom. But
Yeah.
she always says, her birthday was kind of ruined by that, because it quickly took a turn. But man, I think one lasting effect that I have again is I get older. I just constantly, when that date starts rolling around, I just constantly think back to what I was doing during that time and just the thoughts, man, of those passengers. You just think you're flying back. Some of those passengers are trying to fly back home. Some of those passengers just flying for a vacation, and then something like that happens. You know what I'm saying? And it's so tragic, horrible event that happened. I hate it for every one of those passengers, listening to the tapes when they were. I think that was one of the hardest parts of that documentary, listening to the calls, the 911 calls, TSA calls, the one flight, I think it was the second flight that hit, or no, that was a flight that hit the Pentagon. uh, I believe it's either the flight that hit the Pentagon or the one that the passengers fought back on. But listening to those TSA agents and those passengers call back home to their families, man, that's the last time that they got to call back home, and some of them didn't even get them. They just left the voicemail on the answering machine. That's just an eerie feeling, man. I can only imagine, you know, that being my spouse or my mom or someone like that, man. But um, another lasting effect is I don't care if you white or black, you can still be racist because we all look at Muslims, no matter what you say, we all look at them the same way. When we see them, especially if it's on the flight, you give them that side eye, like, whoa, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold up. Um, Even their acts aren't malicious. You don't know who they are. They could have nothing to do with it. They could have been raised over here. They're just following their religion, but you're still gonna look at them a certain way. You know what I mean? It's just, and it's so many. It's just such a tragic event, and it's just something that I can tell my kids, my grandkids, my great grandkids that I was a part of, but it's still not a part of history that you want to be a part of, so to say. You know what I'm saying? It's just like being a part of the civil rights movement. Yeah, you get to see the glitz and the glamour that we got somewhat at the end, but when you dig deep and you look into everything that we had to go through, water hoses, the dog bites, the hangings and stuff like that, like when you dig into the nitty gritty of it, it's like, nah, bro, it's not. It wasn't fun. So, man, it's a lot of lasting effects that comes from it, man. But those are some of the ones that kind of hit home to me.
So for me, You know, it's funny you talking about 2014, your first flight. My first flight was actually 2004, a few years after 9/11.
Yeah.
I was flying to Germany, and it was like my crazy that was like my first flight. So I flew from Mississippi to Memphis, Memphis to I think Detroit, and then Detroit to Frankfurt. And my first it was a terrible flight because like my first flight was like shaky as hell, and then when I made it to Memphis they sat me right beside, like I said, some Middle Eastern guy, and my mind went to that place. But I love that experience because he was the nicest man in the world. We conversed the whole time. He just made me feel at ease. And going back to like what I was saying earlier, like I feel as if like it was a beautiful experience because like it opened my eyes and helped me to see that, like, I mean, not everybody is like a terrorist. Not like, even though of course, like, I mean, maybe it's your fear receptors like basically saying, oh, like I should be on alert, but not everybody is a monster. And some people believe in just the tenets of the Muslim teachings, the Islamic teachings, and like they're not monsters. And um I guess like, or 20 years later, or like a lasting effects for me is that like it's like no matter how bad it ever gets, I still have to think that, like, you know, there's somebody on the other side that basically they are just as much of a bystander as I am. They don't mean us, all of them don't mean us harm. You know, they're just people at the end of the day. Lasting effects, I hate the atrocities that this country has done on the behalf of trying to protect us. And in actuality, they just proved to be just as tyrannical as any other, you know, evil force. You know, I mean, we were supposed to be in these countries, you know, fighting a justified and, you know, righteous war, only to get vilified in some of our actions, you know, with decisions that were made by us all. Hell, I almost joined the army for all the wrong reasons. But I almost joined the army, and I only imagine, like, what if I would have joined the army, told to do something I didn't believe in, and have to do it, and then make it to 2020. Maybe I'm shot up, maybe I'm missing a leg, maybe I'm mentally deficient, and now I'm sitting here with all this trauma. And then, you know, what happened in Afghanistan just recently happens, and then I'm just sitting there looking with a dumb face, like, oh God, like, what was it all for? You know, would I put my body on the line, my life on the line? Maybe I might even be here for this. And you know, I'm this is going to be kind of, this is going to be too lengthy, but you know, another lasting effect. We don't talk enough about how after 9/11, the government, if I'm correct, and I could be saying this wrong, excuse me, but the government allotted a lot of monies to small areas or bigger cities to like basically have a readiness, a preparedness plan in case like a terrorist action did happen. And what ended up happening was like they got these monies, these equipment year after year to militarize the police, you know, like to basically keep them on alert. But when the war didn't happen, it's like they kept on getting all these toys. And you talking about like these grown adults, these police in, you know, these police agencies, sometimes in rural areas, getting like these tanks and all these other things. And now it's kind of like, well, we don't have it for, we can't use it for like a actual terrorist attack, but they started using it in their normal everyday thing. And that militarization of like police leads to like police officers basically now they have like these army guns per se, or like are these militarized tactics, and they're using this against our own people, you know. And I feel as if like that only matriculates into like the some of the issues that we've seen in recent with like black people who've been like accosted by police, or like um, just this general degeneration of like already terrible police and citizen relations. And like the people who are going to pay most for this are like black and brown people, unfortunately. Like we really don't talk about that much. And everybody is affected by that. And those lasting effects, it's kind of like it's the unseen things that you don't think about that like end up affecting us for the long term. And that maybe I'm all over the place with that one, but like it sticks out of my mind.
I think for me, one of the lasting effects is what we talked about earlier. That vote, the power that Congress was allowed to give the president with the authorization and the Patriot Act. Need I remind you guys, the Patriot Act, it went through under the guise of phone tapping and listening to conversations and all this kind of stuff that's your cell phones. They can listen to all this information, all this data, supposedly to find or listen to hear intel on who had dealings with nefarious individuals or whatever. But no, there's no telling who they've used that information that they've got on, because like we said before, with the waterboarding and supposedly, we under peace. I mean, with NATO, we supposedly enter into an agreement that we're not, quote unquote, we're not torturing. We don't torture war criminals, individuals that we capture. But as we watched in the documentary, we saw that look the other way. Hey, some things do happen. So there's no telling, not to be a conspiracy theorist, but that information that people are still, that people have gotten, where did all that information go? What are they using that information, that information for?
Are they still using it?
Phone companies, they got your records. They got your information. I'm just saying, you
hey, don't be too loud for the people who don't want to get vaccines because they say they implanting chips in you, but they still use their iPhone and use their Face ID.
I'm just saying, how many times have you searched for something? Hey, you search for something and then voila, you scrolling on YouTube and hey, mysteriously, man, why in the world do I see that ad? Is my phone reading my mind?
Nigga, I was watching something on Netflix and that shit popped up on my Instagram. I was like, what the like I'm talking about on my TV, not on my phone.
I'm just saying.
Well, that's just advertising, I don't think the government is trying to help you get dick pills to, or tell you that, like, like I don't think
on that note, this has been a very soul-stirring episode of they can feel me. But seriously, we do like to take this time out to commemorate and salute those individuals that paid the ultimate price in fighting for our freedoms, and also those first responders that rushed to the scene to save lives that end up tragically giving their lives. We want to salute all individuals, and we would like to also tell you that if you have enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends about the podcast. Always gotta salute my Mississippi Valley State University Delta Devils. Gotta shout them out. Gotta also shout out my Dallas Cowboys, but that's another story. Support black businesses. Please support black businesses. Anything else before we get up out of here, guys? Real quick.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.